North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. We bring you the news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary, and then we debate. The commentary, not the news. I differentiate between my news coverage and my commentary. There's a reason for that, because there has to be a reason for that. It is the Wells Report, and thanks very much for being a part of it. So there was shocking information released by the Surgeon General of the state of Florida. This is the piece of information that the Surgeon General of Florida released. Today, Surgeon General Dr. Joseph Ladapo has announced new guidance regarding mRNA vaccines. Those are the kinds of vaccines that have been used to moderate, if you will, COVID-19 in the United States. The Florida Department of Health conducted an analysis through a self-controlled case series, which is a technique originally developed to evaluate vaccine safety. This analysis found that there is an 84% increase in the relative incidence of cardiac-related death among males 18 to 39 years old within 28 days following mRNA vaccination. With a high level of global immunity to COVID-19, the benefit of vaccination is likely outweighed by this abnormally high risk of cardiac-related deaths among men in this age group. Non-mRNA vaccines were not found to have had these increased risks. As such, the state Surgeon General recommends against males aged 18 to 39 from receiving mRNA COVID-19 vaccines. Those with pre-existing cardiac conditions such as myocarditis and pericarditis should take particular caution when making this decision. Studying the safety and efficacy of any medications, including vaccines, is an important component of public health. This according to Surgeon General Dr. Joseph Ladapo. Far less attention has been paid to safety and concerns of many individuals that have just been dismissed. These are important findings that should be communicated to Floridians. That was a news release from the Florida Department of Health. Now, we do know, and it is widely known, that indeed there were heart difficulties involving pericarditis and myocarditis. Those are two heart conditions that involve inflammation of the heart and the sac that surrounds the heart. We knew that there were troubles with this particular vaccine. This is, however, the first piece of hard public health data that we've seen on it. And you might expect that there were some pretty serious reactions to it. Let me give you just a couple. This from the Washington Post: experts slam Florida Surgeon General's warning on coronavirus vaccines. The guidance from the Florida Health Department came in a terse release at 6:12 Friday evening. That's last Friday. Ahead of a 3-day weekend, Joseph Ladapo, the state's top health official, warned young adult men to stop taking corona vaccines by Moderna and Pfizer-BioNTech, citing an abnormally high risk of heart-related deaths. But Ladapo's recommendation, extrapolated from a short state analysis that has not yet been peer-reviewed, carries no authors, warns the findings are preliminary, and should be interpreted with caution. It was swiftly condemned by medical and public health leaders who said the Florida Surgeon General's announcement was politics masquerading as science and could lead Americans to forego life-saving interventions. More than a dozen experts interviewed by the Washington Post, including specialists in vaccines, patient safety, and study design, listed concerns with the Florida analysis, saying it relies on information gleaned from frequently inaccurate death certificates rather than medical records. It skews the results by trying to exclude anyone with COVID-19 or a COVID-related death, and draws conclusions from a total of 20 cardiac-related deaths in men 18 to 39 that occurred within 4 weeks of vaccination. Experts noted the death may have been caused by other factors, including underlying illnesses or undetected COVID. We're talking about a very small number of deaths. An extra death or two would potentially change these results, said Robert Wachter. He is the chair of the Department of Medicine at the University of California in San Francisco and a co-author of the patient safety textbook used in many medical schools. I'm hesitant to even call it a paper. It isn't published anywhere. The idea the analysis is being used to change policy. It does not have the scientific chops to do that. That was a quote. Here's another one. If you submitted that to a peer-reviewed journal, unless you were paying them to publish it, it would get rejected. This according to Daniel Salmon, who leads the Institute of Vaccine Safety at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. He called Florida's report a dangerous thing to do. Twitter briefly removed Ladapo's post touting the study over the weekend, citing it as misinformation, make that misinformation, before restoring it hours later. The tweet has since been shared more than 50,000 times, cheered by anti-vaccine advocates and amplified by conservative media highlighting Ladapo's claim that his state will not be silent on truth. Now, this firestorm does put a spotlight on the Surgeon General. He is a Harvard-trained physician and researcher who had not specialized in infectious disease but rose to prominence after writing a number of op-eds in the Wall Street Journal questioning coronavirus vaccines, mask wearing, and other interventions. The columns caught the attention of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who late last summer offered Ladapo the job of overseeing roughly a 15,000-person health department in the nation's third most populous state. As Surgeon General, Ladapo's efforts to discourage patients from getting their children vaccinated, challenged mask mandates, and opposed gender dysphoria treatments for children that have been opposed by medical associations such as the Florida chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Those stances have won accolades from conservatives and helped the general burnish his credentials as a populist conservative as he runs for re-election and positions himself for the 2024 GOP presidential contest. By the way, that is bias. This is the Washington Post. Keep in mind, it is a biased news source. In an interview today, make that yesterday, Ladapo defended his vaccine study as an overdue effort to investigate the risks associated with vaccines. He's argued the high level of immunity to the virus raised fresh questions about the shot's risk versus benefits. The Florida analysis sought to explore the relationship between the shots and cardiac-related death, as well as deaths from all causes, by examining the death certificates of Florida residents 18 and older who died within 25 weeks of a vaccine between December 2020 and June 2022. This should have been done by anyone who had the ability to do it in terms of the data and the technical expertise, said Ladapo. Ladapo declined to name who worked on the analysis, saying it was a fake issue and suggested it did not need to be submitted to a journal or go through a peer review. The point of this analysis was to look at a question that was important to answer. In fact, the link between conditions known as myocarditis and pericarditis, which are types of heart inflammation, and the messenger RNA coronavirus vaccines, has been and continues to be heavily researched across several continents. Peter Marks said, "We've been asking all the questions." He's the top vaccine official at the Food and Drug Administration. "We already know that myocarditis and pericarditis are somewhat increased in younger males who get the vaccine. But we also know that's far outweighed by the benefits." So let's talk a little bit about this. So we knew that there was pericarditis. That's the inflammation of the sac that the heart rests in. And myocarditis, which is an inflammation of the heart muscle itself, among young males taking the coronavirus vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine. You got to keep something in mind. Men of this age almost never die. There are very few deaths among males 18 to 39. Not a lot kills them. And so it would not take a large number of deaths based on this criteria to come up with the gaudy number of 84% increase in deaths in that particular age group, in that particular gender group. All right, that wouldn't be that hard to do because, like I said, these people don't really die very much. They just don't die of things. So when you start talking about these sort of things, you then get into the personal decision making process of someone who says, okay, so I need to put this out there because according to my research on this particular criteria, I'm seeing a frightening amount of death among males 18 to 39. He puts it out. Well, this once again starts crossing swords with the political manipulation of public health. There are a lot of people out there that have an awful lot that is at stake when it comes to COVID-19, the way it was handled, et cetera, et cetera. Now, when we started covering the story, and the Wells Report was on it like a blanket when it first started, ask anybody who's been with us for any length of time. We started the day on the Wells Report with the latest COVID-19 vaccine and COVID-19 disease information every single day. And we watched the manipulation of research data almost from about the third or fourth month of this entire fracas. We watched the morphing of it through the CDC. Then we watched with amazement as the go-to source for public health information became Johns Hopkins University, not a federal agency, not any kind of official government source. Why? Well, because the CDC didn't want to take responsibility for once again crossing swords with the political manipulation of COVID-19 and the COVID-19 vaccine. Because the CDC would put out information that was refuted by the President of the United States, or that was after President Trump left office. And then, of course, President Trump would say things about various treatments and so on and so forth that he had information on that was immediately refuted by a mainstream media that was trying to run him out of office. So all of these things, all of this confluence of ulterior agenda became a perfect storm with regards to COVID-19, and yes, President Trump had a part of that because remember, he was the guy that put together Operation Warp Speed to bring these vaccines to the marketplace quickly. And we said that these vaccines would have trouble because we normally don't bring vaccines to the marketplace this quickly. But what I also said about those vaccines was it was a triumph of coming up with something that worked for most people most of the time. Now, what else happened? Well, like I said, the Washington Post pretty much stomped the particular research as non-research. Meanwhile, the doctor, instead of the editorial board, has a completely different point of view. Was it peer-reviewed? Apparently not. The Surgeon General of Florida said we didn't need to peer review it because we just simply took the data that we had and we said, yeah, this is a problem. And there is a precursor for this. There is pericarditis and myocarditis involved in young men taking the COVID-19 vaccine. So what are we seeing now? Well, there's more to share, and I will share it with you in just a couple of moments. But what we're seeing now is we're seeing an awful lot of people that are being willing to push around this Florida Surgeon General. And we'll discover why in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. You are welcome to take part in this debate. There are people that have many comments so far regarding this Surgeon General of Florida report having to do with heart problems for young men between the ages of 18 and 39 who took the COVID-19 vaccine. There are a lot of people who say that this research was bunk, and a lot of them have some pretty good credentials. But then again, what have we seen from people with really good credentials in the last 3 years regarding this particular issue? More about that coming up in a moment. We have a chat room. You can find it at Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Margie says, we sadly know these vaccines had nothing to do with protecting anyone from this virus and had many elements in them they thought that they would not divulge and would not be held responsible for upon anybody suffering injuries or death, which have been many that they won't admit and blame on other circumstances. Well, yeah, there are a whole bunch of issues that are going to be slowly brought to the fore as time goes by. Truth indeed will out on this particular subject, but it may take a while. Alicia said, I feel like they try to make us sick on purpose so they can take money on so-called cures. Gary says, I did the Pfizer 1 and 2 for Team USA, developed excruciating cricks in my neck and back after the second. I'm done with the China virus. No more lab ratting for me. Margie said these vaccines were made to try to rid the world of many, if not most, of us. Well, let's see. My father died from the fluid that built up after the jab. In other words, that's pericarditis. That's that bag that holds the heart. And what ends up happening is that fluid can fill. I'm not saying that this was caused by the vaccine. I'm just saying that pericarditis is when fluid fills up, that lining gets inflamed, and then there's fluid that builds up and squeezes the heart. And when the heart beats, it's very, very serious muscle tissue. When it beats, it gets all the rest it needs between the beats. Well, if you squeeze your heart, then what ends up happening is it doesn't have a chance to fully relax. It speeds up everything, and then it gets tired, and then it stops. We'll see. Let's see. They had no right to mandate these things, mask or vaccine. CDC needs to go. Hindsight hopefully won't be covered up as data starts coming in. I don't trust the CDC. Why would you trust the CDC? Why would you? It's a political organization. It is not a public health organization. It's a political organization. And that's apparently the way they like it. Let's see what else. I never got any shots and warned everybody about them. Not all listened. It makes me very sad. I knew they were not to be trusted. It was a sense of warning that told me to beware of them. Yeah. A lot of people, when they come up with a brand new vaccine, a lot of people, what they end up doing is they end up waiting a couple of years before they take them. Yeah. So we'll see. And there are some other things here. I asked the doctor if my father died from the vaccine, and the doctor said, I can't say that it wasn't. Well, and once again, there you have it. The question is, and it gets back to this. This vaccine has what has been called not overly good results. The guy who said that was Anthony Fauci. And the thing about it is this, I took 2 of them. I still got COVID. Was it terrible? No, it was a mild cold. It was, however, the first cold I'd had in 15 years. So maybe it was something beyond just the typical cold virus that we deal with every year. All I can say is that most of what this Florida Attorney General has said about all of this, questioning the coronavirus vaccines and so on and so forth, is more right than the people that have been telling us that people who think that way are wrong. More about that coming up. This is the Wells Report. Thanks very much for being with us. Back in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. You're also welcome to join the chat. It's flying today. The chat room on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. If you find value in this broadcast, honestly reported news, analysis, commentary, and debate, then by all means, please share it with your friends. Please do. Share the links of this show with your friends. Also, subscribe to the broadcast, either on Facebook or Twitter or Twitch or YouTube. Just subscribe to it. That would be great. Float a couple of likes downstream to us. That would also be nice. And then, if you'd like to perhaps put your money where my mouth is, you can go to patreon.com/The Wells Report. That's patreon.com/The Wells Report. And you can essentially donate $1, $2, $5, whatever you'd like. And it would be most appreciated by the management. Thanks very much. I appreciate you with this small little advertisement for the Wells Report, a show I'm pretty proud of because we work really hard on it. And I hope you find value in it. So we're talking a little bit about the Florida Surgeon General, a guy who has put out a piece of research that he has great confidence in, talking about the heart problems that have been documented by more than just himself over the COVID-19 vaccines. Now, a lot of people are coming out of the woodwork and criticizing this Florida Surgeon General. This is Dr. Ladapo. But I think what they're doing here is a lot of it may be a little bit of good old-fashioned butt covering. On the other hand, a lot of what we deal with here is based on opinion. You hire your doctor based on opinions that this doctor holds regarding your health. It is an art, not a science. That's why you do not walk into a gigantic computer that pokes and prods you and then come out to a printout at the end of it. These people use their judgment. They use their opinion. And obviously, there can be arguments about opinions. All you got to do to figure that out is to listen to this broadcast for a while. But let's take a look at some of the downstream effects. The Florida Surgeon General was blocked from sharing COVID-19 vaccine study that he did on Twitter. It was gone, then it was back, but it was banned. Reuters reports that Twitter Incorporated said that users will be required to remove new tweets that advance harmfully false or misleading claims about COVID-19 vaccines. And that's also understandable. Back to the Washington Post, vaccine disinformation has real-world effects on Americans who have been confused or frightened by reports they may be unsafe. Jason Schwartz, a Yale University associate professor who specializes in vaccine policy, co-authored a study released last month that found substantially higher excess death rates for registered Republicans than compared to registered Democrats, with almost all of the differences concentrated in the period after vaccines were widely available in our study states. The only thing that I can say on that is, sorry, but after President Biden took office, we had more cases and more deaths. And that was when vaccines, anybody who refused to take a vaccine was getting pounded or fired or pounded, then fired, or any number of other things. This while more and more information, anecdotal information, people taking shots and getting COVID-19, that's me. All kinds of things, masks. Masks had nothing to do with anything that worked. Social distancing is just basically, I don't know what that was, except some sort of exercise in social obedience. There were a lot of things that just absolutely flew apart, that became moot. And people played the hysteria card so many times that people just started ignoring them because the reality didn't match up with the hysterical predictions. No, we don't have the whole story on COVID-19, not by a long shot. But take a look at a guy who has a different idea of just exactly what was happening. He was on the leading edge of this. He was at odds with Dr. Anthony Fauci almost from the beginning. There were a lot of people like that. Dr. Rand Paul, for example, a United States senator. There were a lot of people that had real problems with all of this. Now, let's ask this question. Would this have been far worse without Operation Warp Speed and these vaccines? We will never know. We will never know. This particular study from Yale that says more Republicans died than Democrats. Really? I wonder why. Is it because Democrats just do whatever their government tells them to? They sure didn't during the Trump years. Just saying. Just exactly why is all this? So let's talk a little bit more about it. And by the way, they're saying that these vaccines saved lives. Did they? Did they? Once again, we had no idea what was going on around the rest of the world. You know what I found strange? During this entire thing, I heard about the Far East. And I heard about Europe. And I heard about Russia, and I heard about all of these places, but I didn't really hear much coming from the African continent. How many people died of COVID there? You just didn't get any news from that. Why? How come? For that matter, you didn't get a lot of news from South America either. So what's going on? Is there more to this than what we know? Maybe. Or maybe in Africa and places like Africa, immune systems are stronger because they have to be. Because the infrastructure isn't necessarily as developed as it is in Europe and in Russia, even in the Far East, and certainly not in the United States. But the point of the matter is, and this is what I'm trying to tell you, this guy is trying to come up with a different narrative, one that fits more and more and more of the reality that we have seen. And look how he's being handled. He's being absolutely sundered by the mainstream media and many people in the mainstream media. Let's get back to this article from the Washington Post. Jason Schwartz argues that Florida's analysis appeared to be part of a relentless effort to sow confusion and undermine public health response. Was the public health response, it was amazing. The public health response was truly amazing. But you got to keep in mind that this is the end. We're going through the third year of this at this point. We're going through the third year of this. There are people that have lost their jobs and their careers because they wouldn't take that shot. And they're still around to complain about the fact that they lost their jobs and careers. Now, this is all anecdotal information. There are not any kinds of honest research projects that can prove most of this, which makes it even worse. This is why in socialist countries, people die of diseases that they wouldn't die of in more free countries. And the reason is because politics becomes more important than actual public health. And that's exactly what happened here. And then this crazy need for the mainstream media to abandon the truth and choose political sides turned them into a propaganda wing of the Democrat Party. Anything that Donald Trump said was refuted by Democrats, even if it came right out of the CDC book. It was ridiculous. I pointed it out several times on this very broadcast. Remdesivir. Remdesivir came right out of the CDC's treatment handbook for COVID-19. Donald Trump said something about it, and the mainstream media and the Democrat Party just leaped on it. They just leaped all over it. And nobody reported, except me, that it was in the CDC treatment guide. It's unbelievable. It was just unbelievable. But this is what happens when politics becomes more important than public health. When public health becomes a political tool instead of a necessary and vital service from a government for its people. Not for its politicians, for its people. And all that was set aside during the COVID-19 mess, which is why we know for a fact that anything having to do with public health cannot be handled by the government of the United States. There have been people in the chat room that said, we need to get rid of the CDC. I said that about 2 years ago. When they started warping the statistics that were plainly available for the sake of politics, I said, we're in trouble here. And all I could do was report what I had. And that's what I did. But I was paying attention at the time. Other experts worry that Ladapo's warning could hamper efforts to encourage millions of people to get coronavirus booster shots before a predicted fall and winter surge of cases. Well, how does that explain all the surge of cases after everybody was getting vaccinated? How does that account for all that? Just keep getting shots? Just keep getting shots over and over and over again because there's more COVID coming. Is that the way this works? Then when you also see how politicians absolutely utilized emergency powers to absolutely curtail, set aside constitutional rights. There's no wonder why these people are saying, hey, wait a minute. Don't say that we were wrong. Don't say that we were wrong. We'll have to cancel you, which is what Twitter did. So they're worried that people won't get coronavirus booster shots. I'm not getting a coronavirus booster shot. I got one booster shot. I got the 2-shot series. Then I got a booster shot. Then I got COVID. Thanks, I'll take my chances. Now, is that because somebody said something along the lines of, my God, if you take that shot, your toes will fly off your feet up your nose and you'll strangle to death on your toenail? No, it had nothing to do with any of that. It's my own personal experience. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I've taken a booster. I've taken the shots. And I got COVID. Sorry, guys. Now, I'm not saying that anybody should follow in my footsteps. Hell, there were people that said, John David, don't take those shots. Said I got to. I have to. I had to take the shot so I could report on how I felt every single day. I took 3 Moderna shots, no troubles whatsoever. None. And then I got COVID. I'm going, okay. Well, hopefully there isn't some long-term problem that I'm going to have to deal with. And even if there is, you got to die of something. I'm not really worried about it at that point, at this particular moment. I'm not worried about it. But I am worried about the fact that truth gets manipulated before it becomes news. Now, we don't know whether Ladapo's research is actually true. But we do know that it's out there. And we do know that this guy has been more accurate about what was actually happening than Dr. Anthony Fauci when it came to masks and social distancing and these shots in general. He's been saying, this isn't exactly the way this works. Hello. And even, and there was something else coming out of the mainstream when it came about COVID-19. That your own body's immune system won't be effective against this virus. Which was complete garbage right off the bat. Because if that was true, the human species would have been extinct 1,000,000 years ago if we didn't have an immune system that learned through the diseases it fought off. And they said that in plain sight. I told people that was nuts. Because it is. Biden officials were blindsided by the Florida warning. They spent the weekend deliberating about how and whether to respond. According to people with knowledge of the conversations, White House Health Department leaders worried that if unanswered, the message would inflame vaccine fears. How about this? How about ineffectiveness of vaccines will inflame vaccine fears? This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. We were talking about the White House response to this particular study from Florida. They were caught blindsided by it. Today, federal officials had crafted a statement that called the Florida recommendation flawed and a far cry from the science. This from Saren Lovenheim, spokesperson for the Department of Health and Human Services, writing in an email, COVID-19 vaccines have been proven safe and effective. Severe adverse reactions are rare. The benefits of COVID-19 vaccination, preventing death and hospitalization, are well established and continue to outweigh any potential risks. The Florida study also arrived as White House leaders were pushing their own vaccine message. Earlier that same day, Biden health officials had trumpeted study findings showing the shots resulted in about 675,000 fewer hospitalizations and about 350,000 fewer deaths among seniors last year. So once again, when you start looking at all of this stuff, what you have to keep in mind is that a flawed and far cry from the science. The science was manipulated for political effect. It was manipulated because it had to be. Because the people that were dealing with all of this simply did not want to deal with the fact that they could indeed be wrong. Nobody knew. And we have to keep that in mind too. There are an awful lot of people that throw out an awful lot of conspiracy-laden information or opinions. What you have to understand here is this. This was new. At the get-go, it was new. And so when we did all that, all these decisions were made on the fly. Now, we have seen the food fight that ensued between all kinds of people regarding, well, this was true. Well, no, that's not true. And then Anthony Fauci would say something and somebody would say, no, that's full of crap. And then Fauci would say, would contradict himself. Don't wear masks. That's the first thing he came up with. Masks don't matter. And the reason is because he wanted these N95 masks to go to the hospitals. Obviously, masks work at some level. And a lot of people were buying them as fast as they could find them. And so Anthony Fauci said, Dad, don't worry about masks. And then all of a sudden you had to wear a mask. And that went back and forth 3 or 4 times. Remember, this was all at the beginning. This was new. The CDC started out with beautiful research, beautiful statistics. They didn't lead to any answers, but at least the statistical capability to be able to take a look at trends and start seeing some things as they were building these stats was beautiful. And then all of a sudden they stopped. They abdicated their responsibilities to the people of the United States and turned things over to Johns Hopkins. And this food fight, back and forth, continues to this day, based on not just that, but our own knowledge as well, the things that we have seen ourselves. I got 3 shots. I got COVID. Is it a vaccine? I don't know. Every other vaccine I got kept me from getting sick. And I've gotten a lot of them. I've gotten a flu shot every year for 15 years. This will be year 16, and I'm going to do it. Why? Because it works. It works. Not only did I not have flu, hell, I didn't even have the cold until I got COVID. I didn't have the common cold until I got COVID. And that's exactly what it felt like, just like a common cold. So you have to keep in mind a few things. The things that I think we should take away are this. Let's not decide that there are people in the government that are trying to kill us all. They were making the best decisions they could with the information that they had. Or they made decisions that would make them more powerful in their own mind, and a few people did that too. But as time went by, people began to realize that hitting the panic button leads to people not panicking anymore. They just say, well, that siren's going off again. And they just go about their business, which is where we are now. By the way, that's the way Sweden handled it from the get-go. They just said, boy, wash your hands. Wash your hands. Make sure you brush your teeth, wash your hands. Get plenty of rest, drink plenty of fluids. Good luck. And that's how they got through all of that. So in other words, when you start looking at all of this, just understand that this argument, there is going to be an argument. The other thing we have to keep in mind is, and what we have learned, is we have to make sure the government stays the hell out of public health. The CDC needs to be a completely apolitical, independent agency of people that really know what they're doing. I would base it more like, I don't know, the Supreme Court with doctors that actually collate information and make public health decisions. Specific doctors trained in that particular form of the art. And I would get politics the hell out of it. And politicians could take the data that the CDC put out and make of it what they would. But if they got something wrong, the CDC would nail them for it. And that, by the way, is the way it used to be until this deep state revolution that we still exist in. This is the Wells Report. That's hour number one. Stick around. Hour number two coming up in just a couple of moments. Thanks for joining us on the Wells Report. All right, my friends, I shall return in just a little bit, okay? North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We bring you the news, honest reporting of the day's events. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. I make commentary. That's not the news. That's my opinion, just as valuable as yours. And then we debate. We debate the news, the analysis, and the commentary. And I can hardly wait to hear from you. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. You can also join us on the chat room on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. We're looking forward to you being there as well. Thanks very much for being a part of this. We had a wonderful conversation regarding some very interesting research that was done by the Florida Surgeon General that pointed out that there was a huge increase in cardiac death among men aged 18 to 39, at least in the state of Florida, that had to do with pericarditis and myocarditis, which was something that we actually knew something about back in the day when all this got started. Well, he did a research project and said that the actual instances of death because of people that took these particular shots was sufficient enough for him to warn men between the ages of 18 to 39 not to take the shots. And that created a kerfuffle that is still reverberating around the nation. And that's what the first hour is all about. I suggest you go and listen to that. It's important. The chat room was also hopping. Let's see. President Trump signed an emergency order before leaving office. It can't be undone by any other sitting president. The order is named My Body, My Choice. No new law by any new president or our government can legally force a mandatory shot or a medication on you. This also covers the test. Just say no. Well, yeah, except there are an awful lot of people that do not fit under that criteria. For example, the Supreme Court just said that health workers, there was a lawsuit that said, hey, we don't want to take this shot. The Supreme Court said, no, I'm sorry, we're not going to hear the case, which meant that the lower court ruling stands, which means that the Biden mandate for shots among health workers is still in effect. So there you go. Randy says, science, science, science. Love how Pelosi and others did that to get their agenda across, how they used it. There are many others. It was and is a drilling process. Let's see what else. Let's see. Mutations of novel viruses seem to be weak. You just get the sniffles, but media wants you to think that you'll die a slow and painful death. Well, I knew some people that had long COVID recently, and it's no joy. It's very, very difficult. They didn't die, thankfully, but there you go. Let's see. All right, let me just going through all these. And that's about it. Many healthcare workers and airline personnel walked off their jobs because of forced vaccines. My brothers and sisters in the United States military are dealing with all this. So my body, my choice, unless it comes to the COVID-19 vaccine, huh? Yeah. Well, this is why I keep saying we really need to keep the government out of American healthcare. It's absolutely essential that we do that, simply in my humble opinion. There was amazing information that came out just a little bit ago regarding somebody that you know. She was a presidential candidate. She is someone that I would classify as a real Democrat. I was talking yesterday about conservative Democrats and the Conservative Party of the United States. There are conservative Democrats. John F. Kennedy was a conservative Democrat. They do exist. Ronald Reagan called them. Sometimes you can't say all the words at the same time. You have to say them in sequence. Ronald Reagan called them Blue Dog Democrats. Well, we just ran across another one, and this is what she had to say about her future as a member of the Democrat Party. something tells me that you didn't get a chance to actually hear that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start that over again. Please forgive the sudden interruption.
I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that's under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers who are driven by cowardly wokeness, who divide us by racializing every issue and stoking anti-white racism, who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution, who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, who demonize the police but protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans, who believe in open borders, who weaponize the national security state to go after their political opponents, and above all, who are dragging us ever closer to nuclear war. Now, I believe in a government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not. Instead, it stands for a government that is of, by, and for the powerful elite. Now, I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in leaving the Democratic Party. If you can no longer stomach the direction that the so-called woke Democratic Party ideologues are taking our country, then I invite you to join me.
And that is Tulsi Gabbard, who is, as far as we know, leaving the Democrat Party. Here's the way this worked. This is according to USA Today. Former Democrat presidential candidate and Hawaii Representative Tulsi Gabbard announced today that she is leaving the Democrat Party. Gabbard tweeted a long video saying she can no longer remain in today's Democrat Party, which is now under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers driven by cowardly wokeness. In the minute-long video, Gabbard said Democrats are divisive by racializing issues and stoking anti-white racism. She said that she believes the left-leaning party works to undermine our God-given freedoms in the Constitution. I believe in a government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people. Unfortunately, today's Democrat Party does not. Instead, it stands for a government that is of and by and for the powerful elite. Gabbard ran in 2022 as a Democrat presidential primary candidate before suspending her campaign in March, saying she would support President Joe Biden. She served in the House of Representatives from 2013 to 2021. In the video, Gabbard said that Democrats are hostile to people of faith, demonize police but protect criminals, weaponize the national security state to attack political opponents, and are driving the country closer to nuclear war. She called on fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join her in leaving the Democrat Party. She did not include details as to which political party she will join or whether she plans to switch to the Republican Party. All I can say is that Tulsi Gabbard does at least appear to be someone who understands what's been going on with the Democrat Party as I understand what's been going on with the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party is lost. The Democrat Party has essentially decided that the United States is a horrible institution that needs to be changed radically, fundamentally. And sorry, I'm not sure the American people agree. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that most of us don't agree. And what happens when that happens is that you have a whole bunch of people that suddenly are at odds with a Democrat Party that has no resemblance to the Democrat Party of, okay, JFK, LBJ, even Jimmy Carter. It has absolutely no resemblance, and certainly not the party of Bill Clinton. I've made it very clear on this broadcast that Bill Clinton was very likely the last real Democrat president, the last one. One of his most notable quotes: "The days of big government are over." He was correct. He was correct. And so the Democrat Party is coming to a crossroads. It's coming to the fork in the road. It will either take the left fork or it will take the more center one. If it goes left, the brand will be damaged forever to the point where they're just going to have to abandon it. If the Democrat Party continues to allow progressive policymakers to stand up and talk about the joys of socialism and not remove them from the party, we will very likely never see the Democrat Party again. Because they certainly aren't going to win. They're not going to turn this country into a socialist politician's playground. They're not going to be able to do it. The people of the United States simply won't allow it. And neither should they. And so Tulsi Gabbard is very much like a guy named Ronald Reagan. He was a lifelong Democrat before he finally said, you know what? I didn't leave the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party left me. And he became one of the greatest patriots and one of the greatest presidents of all time. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, Ronald Reagan absolutely is the greatest president of my lifetime, all things considered. And so she says those people that are frustrated with the Democrat Party and are frustrated with the idea that division and everybody's a racist except for a bunch of white elites, well, maybe she's given you a track away from that particular party. I just wish there was a place for you to land. I really do believe that there is a place in the United States for a political party that bases its policy ideals on the Constitution and Bill of Rights and the clear mandate from that Constitution that says the government that is created by this document serves we the people. Not we the Democrats, not we the Republicans, certainly not we the socialists. We the people. The government of the United States should operate to the benefit of the people of the United States. And there needs to be a political party that stands for the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and for we the people. The Republican Party isn't that, by the way. Like I said, the Republican Party is a facilitator party. It's about facilitating, and I'll talk more about that after the break. But what I want you to understand is that there are going to be more quote-unquote Democrats leaving the Democrat Party as the Democrat Party continues to lose itself in this delirium of supposed future American socialism. It just doesn't work. It never will work. And the people of the United States have had just about enough of it. And you can see it. You can see it in the news media changing. You can see it in the fact that Americans are simply not rising to the bait in the same ways they used to. And we're going to see an awful lot of things based on voter decisions. And that's all coming up in less than 30 days. You are listening to The Wells Report. I'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. So Tulsi Gabbard decides to leave the Democrat Party. Where will she land? I don't know. There have been all kinds of responses from both the left and the right. Katie Fang says, wait, you were a Democrat? Sure could have fooled me. Let's see. Louise Mensch said, no, she definitely wasn't ever. Dos Vidania, Tulsi. Nobody will miss you. We'll see. Liberal writer Thor Benson replied to Gabbard's announcement with a meme of a person putting on clown makeup. Yeah, let's see. Dean Obadiah said, bye, Tulsi. Senior BuzzFeed reporter David Mack tweeted a mock headline, noted Republican Tulsi Gabbard has left the Democrat Party. MSNBC host Mehdi Hassan, who previously accused Gabbard of doing all the right-wing things, declared, surprise, I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. Other liberals cheered her departure by making the sarcastic phrase, bye, Felicia. Former View host Meghan McCain said, congratulations, there are so few free thinkers and independents left in this world, and you are one of them. We are in your corner, onward and upward. Managing editor of Hot Air, Ed Morrissey, tweeted, don't hold back, Tulsi. Tell us how you really feel. This may be how a lot of disillusioned Democrats feel right now, too. Senior counsel at the Internet Accountability Project, Will Chamberlain, cheered the news by writing, Democrats got Bill Kristol and we're going to get Tulsi Gabbard winning. National Director of Priests for Life, Father Frank Pavone, praying for Tulsi and that many more see the light as well. The moderate Democrat has irked the left for speaking out against woke ideology within her party, as well as being a fierce critic of the Biden administration. And by the way, she also did something else. She brought up something called God-given rights. God-given rights. If you want to know why the left in the United States is so anti-faith and anti-religion, is because of the Declaration of Independence that said we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, not inalienable. It's unalienable. That meaning you cannot put laws against these rights because our rights don't come from the government. Our rights come from God. And in order to defray all of that, well, you have to defray God first, don't you? Which is why the attack on Christianity, the long dominant religion in the United States, that's why all of these things have happened. That's why it's all happened. And so we're seeing people begin to wake up. Chris Licht taking over CNN. Politico becoming an honest news source again. We're seeing the fact that people, and we, by the way, we're going to be speaking about this a little bit more later on today. What we're going to see here is we're going to see that things are changing. Because one of the things about socialist philosophy and all of this leftist progressivism is it relies on a couple of things. More than that, but a couple of things that actually matter to us. In order for socialism to function, it relies on dishonesty. It relies on dishonesty. And it also relies on people not being human. What's fascinating is that sooner or later, people will revert to human nature. And that's one of the reasons why the Soviet Union lasted about a little over 80 years, and why the United States of America, based on human nature, has existed for nearly 250. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for being a part of our broadcast. We're going to be right back with more in just a minute. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. There is breaking news as we come back from this break. CNN is reporting the Justice Department is urging the Supreme Court to reject former President Donald Trump's request that it intervene in the dispute over classified documents seized from President Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate last summer. Interesting. That is interesting. Why would the DOJ urge the Supreme Court to do anything? This just hit me, so I was thinking about this, and I'm going, well, there have been a couple of things regarding the Mar-a-Lago papers. Specifically, why would it be that President Trump would have taken the Mar-a-Lago papers in the first place? Most people think, well, it's for his presidential library. Most people thought that it was, based on maybe there was some exculpatory information regarding the Mueller investigation, et cetera, et cetera. And when I found out, I was partially correct on that. The latest fascinating theory that we've heard from President Trump regarding his possession of the Mar-a-Lago papers was that he was trying to work out a deal with the National Archives to be able to get some information regarding the impeachments and regarding January 6th and regarding the Mueller investigation, which would make sense. And once again, it would also make sense that since the National Archivists then immediately went out and started talking to the FBI about things, that the FBI said, well, we need to go get that leverage. So that's something that's out there. But getting back to this breaking news, why would the DOJ urge the Supreme Court to not get involved in the Mar-a-Lago circumstance? Why would they go directly to the Supreme Court? I don't have any idea why that would happen. Unless, of course, they are trying to do everything they possibly can not to have to open up all of the things that they have clearly done wrong having to do with Donald Trump. This story is far from being told. Remember, Donald Trump is working his way through what is going to be, for the next couple of years at least, a very intriguing part of American history. You remember I said that today. It is the 11th day of October, year of our Lord 2022. You remember I said this. Donald Trump is far from finished. And he's far from finishing what he had done without, I think, really thinking about it, which was to expose all the anti-Americanism that is incumbent in our current government and the people that support it, specifically the mainstream media. And that the DOJ would try to get the Supreme Court to stay out of something without putting it in some form of legal term, which would be totally out of order. That's fascinating. We'll keep our eyes on it for you. And we'll let you know more about it when we know more about it. So yesterday, this article, I didn't get a chance to, by the way, on yesterday's broadcast, I was ranting yesterday. It doesn't happen very often, but I sort of kind of ranted a little bit yesterday and didn't get a chance to get some things done that I wanted to get done, and this was one of them. Los Angeles City Council President Nury Martinez resigned. Now remember, this is yesterday. She resigned from her leadership role following a report about an audio recording that captured openly racist remarks made with other Latino council members last year, including those directed at a white colleague's young black son. Martinez said in a statement, effective immediately, I'm resigning as president of the Los Angeles City Council. Remember, this was yesterday. The move reportedly means she will still retain her seat as a council member. I take responsibility for what I said. There are no excuses for these comments. I am so sorry. I sincerely apologize to the people I hurt with my words, to my colleagues, their families, especially to Mike, Sean, and your son. As a mother, I know better, and I'm sorry. I'm truly ashamed. I know this is the result of my own actions. I'm sorry to your entire family for putting you through this. As someone who believes deeply in the empowerment of communities of color, I recognize my comments undercut that goal. Going forward, reconciliation will be my priority. I have already reached out to many of my Black colleagues and other Black leaders to express regret in order for us to heal. I ask for forgiveness from my colleagues and from residents of this city I love so much. In the end, it's not my apologies that matter most. It will be my actions from this day forward. I hope you will give me the opportunity to make amends. The Los Angeles Times first reported about the audio recording of a conversation that happened October 2021, between Martinez, Councilmember Gil Cedillo, and Kevin De Leon, and LA County Federation of Labor President Ron Herrera while discussing the redrawing of districts. According to the Times, Martinez criticized another colleague, Councilor Mike Bonin, who is white, over the parenting of his Black son, who she said Bonin treated like an accessory. Martinez remarked on the toddler's behavior during a Martin Luther King Day parade, saying that the float would have tipped over if she and other women present didn't step in to parent this kid. Martinez then said, "They're raising him like a little white kid." This, according to the recording leaked on Reddit. I was like, this kid needs a beat down. Let me take him around the corner, and then I'll bring him back. Martinez also called Bonin's son Ese Changuito, which is Spanish for that little monkey. De Leon chimed in, comparing Bonin's handling of the toddler to when Yuri brings her little yard bag or the Louis Vuitton bag. I don't know that I can say that. Su negrito, like on the side. Really? She seemingly was unaware that she was being recorded. Martinez also recalled a conversation she had with the businessman Danny Bakewell about the possibility of transferring Los Angeles International Airport out of Bonin City Council District into the City Council member Marquise Harris Dawson. The council president said she told Bakewell, "Go get the airport from his little brother, that little B. Bonin." And then she went on, De Leon said, "Mike Bonin won't effing ever say peep about Latinos. He'll never say an effing word about us." Martinez also derided Los Angeles County District George Gascon, District Attorney George Gascon, after the group pondered whether Gascon would endorse Cedillo in his reelection campaign. F that guy, he's with the blacks, Martinez is heard saying. The conversation also steered toward City Council member Mark Ridley Thomas and his indictment on federal corruption charges as Martinez and Controller Ron Galperin would decide whether Ridley Thomas gets paid during his suspension. Martinez said, "You need to go talk to that white guy. It's not us. It's the white members on this council that will mother F you in a heartbeat." So that was yesterday. And the opinion piece today, and also, by the way, the resignation has turned into a leave of absence today. So obviously the damage control is in full force. This is an op-ed piece by Suzette Hackney from USA Today. The headline is, "You don't need to be a white supremacist to be a racist. LA Council conversation proves it." This is how the story goes. "Here's another ugly truth about the ugliness of racism. One doesn't have to be a white supremacist to be racist. Because when it comes to racism, one factor always seems to get lost in the discussion. Racism is about power, maintaining it, or stealing it." I'm going to read that again because it is absolutely true. Racism is about power, maintaining it, or stealing it. That's brilliant. A year ago, Los Angeles City Council President Yuri Martinez showed a select few who she is, a racist, conniving, power-hungry elected official, willing to do and say anything to ensure proposed redistricting maps worked in her favor. She described Waxahachie immigrants living in the Koreatown neighborhood of Los Angeles as little, short, dark people. Okay. And on and on and on. On Tuesday, today, the council's first Latina president showed us all who she is, still racist, still conniving, still power-hungry, and still on the council. She took a leave of absence from her leadership position, refused to remove herself from the city's legislative body. Her defiance and refusing to relinquish her role in the council is unacceptable. Her hubris to think she still calls the shots, especially after her pathetic apology, is disgusting. I take responsibility for what I said. There are no excuses for those comments. That's what Martinez said. As a mother, really? Because as a mom, she knows better? First, let's hope her kids know better. This is the opinion piece. Let's hope they won't subscribe to her prejudice and hate. But also, how about she should have known better because she's a person, and human beings don't talk about each other like that. The hate-filled rant was from just one meeting. Imagine what Martinez says in the privacy of her home or among friends at dinner. Martinez wasn't throwing around racist tropes. She has an agenda. Let's not forget the context of her comments. Her goal was to upend LA's political structure, to find a way to redistrict voting so Latinos wielded more power while silencing Black Angelenos. Racism comes in many colors. In one of America's most diverse cities, it's a cautionary tale about how race and control are never mutually exclusive. In this case, Martinez and these other Latino elected officials were hell-bent on shoring up political dominance by any means necessary. Anti-Blackness and its marginalizing sentiment comes in many hues, ethnicities, and nationalities. Martinez, a person of color, isn't an ally. She's a bigot. This is brilliant. This may be one of the best op-ed pieces I've ever read on racism. Taking a leave of absence from her leadership role is not enough. Martinez has exposed who she is, a reckless racist who's unfit to represent the people of Los Angeles. She needs to relinquish her council seat and take her trash colleagues, those who sat and laughed during the intolerant riff, with her. But let's remember the singular and absolute important quote from this op-ed piece. And we need to apply this to everything that we hear about when somebody is castigating someone else for racism or apparent racism or calling people that disagree with them politically racists. This is important to remember. Racism is about power, maintaining it, or stealing it. Isn't that amazing? Racism is about power, maintaining it, or stealing it. Now you go back and you think about the racist charges, the unjustified racist charges that you have heard thrown against other people for decades. Let me ask you this. Does that statement not actually cover the motive behind those accusations? Of course it does. Of course it does. As a Donald Trump voter, I was called a racist by notable Americans. Of the left, of course, but still notable Americans. I've been called a terrorist. But I've been called a racist when it's absolutely not true. And why is it? Because they're working to maintain power, or they're working to steal it. Joe Biden famously said, "If you don't vote for me, you ain't black." That's racism in an attempt to steal power. Racism is about power, maintaining it or stealing it. Wow. So the next time some leftist steps up and says, my God, that person is nothing but a racist, you need to remember that. What are they actually trying to get a hold of? Now you know. Power. By stealing it, or power by maintaining it. Sort of takes it into a completely different direction, doesn't it? This is the Wells Report. Back with more in a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. By the way, in case you're wondering, Vice President Kamala Harris accused Republican governors of dereliction of duty in transporting migrants north into liberal cities and jurisdictions while renewing her calls for solutions to the migrant crisis, including amnesty for millions of illegal immigrants. No. Harris was asked on Late Night with Seth Meyers about the transportation of migrants north by Republican governors in the south of the country. Quote, we're talking about people who are fleeing great harm. They've fled great harm, and they are seeking refuge. And talk about political theater playing games with people's lives. There are mothers with sleeping babies getting off those buses, she said. And how is that any different between what President Biden is doing with these same people? Texas Governor Greg Abbott's office has reported it's transported about 8,000 migrants to Washington, D.C., 3,000 to New York City, and 1,000 to Chicago. Arizona has bused migrants to Washington, D.C. Florida has flown migrants to approximately 50 to Martha's Vineyard. The states have said that they are filling the gap left by federal inaction on the border crisis, which has exploded since Biden took office, with more than 200,000 migrant encounters a month and more than 2.1 million encounters this fiscal year alone. The crisis has left border towns and cities overwhelmed, even with the Democrat mayor of El Paso sending migrants north to relieve overcrowding in his city. But it's the Republican transports that have sparked outrage from Democrats, both in the White House and in the cities, which have declared emergencies and demanded federal assistance, although their numbers are just a fraction of those being encountered at the border. They've accused Republicans of political gamesmanship and a lack of communication and coordination. And then Vice President Harris tore into the governors. I think it's an absolute dereliction of duty. If you see the problem and we agree we need to address it, if you're a leader, participate in a solution. They are participating in a solution. The people coming across the Texas border, the Arizona border, and into Florida are uninvited. They're uninvited. It's illegal in Texas and in Arizona and in Florida to have sanctuary cities. It's illegal. But there are cities around the United States that are proudly cities where people can resettle illegally. They are sanctuary cities. In other words, those are cities that invite people in order to live in peace. So once again, the Florida governor, the Texas governor, the Arizona governor, taking people from their states that are uninvited and sending them to places where they are invited. That's not inhumane. That's graciousness. Oh, well, you guys are sanctuary cities? Well, here. Let's send you some of our illegal immigrants. Because if they're going to be safe there, then by all means, that's the right thing to do. It's not the wrong thing to do. It's not inhuman. It's not political theater. It's none of those things. What it is turning those people over to a place where they're welcome. Isn't it? The answer is yes. Yes, John David, you're completely correct. And all of this garbage from Vice President Harris, who has done nothing. She came to Texas and didn't go to the border. It's only 500 more miles. Why didn't you go? It's not that far. Spend some time down there. See what your policies are giving Texas. But you don't want to do that, do you? No, you don't want to see the truth, do you? Well, that's one of the cool things about Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott and Doug Ducey. If you don't want to come down to the border to see the reality, well, we'll send part of the border up to you. Welcome to Texas. This hypocrisy, this unwillingness to confront reality, allows other unreal political policies until eventually you're ruling in a chaotic mess, and the way out gets more difficult and more difficult with every passing day, week, month, year. Because nobody is holding any of these people accountable except Ron DeSantis, Doug Ducey, and Texas Governor Greg Abbott. They're finally being held accountable, and they hate it. Just a bare microcosm of the immigrant disasters that befall Florida, Texas, and Arizona every single day is driving these cities into states of emergency. By the way, I can't remember Texas demanding federal help for all of these difficulties. Can you? See, what we have to do is we have to have reality in governance. Of all places, reality in governance. People who can't speak reality in governance are called politicians. People who say we've got to find our way out of this mess are called neighbors. Who are you going to elect next time? Politicians or neighbors? I suggest you pick the latter, and I suggest you get started in the next, I don't know what, 29 days? We have seen what these politicians are capable of doing. Do we really want more of it? This is the Wells Report, hour number 2, back with hour number 3 in just a moment. Thanks for joining us. And so there you go. Back in a sec. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. What is it? It's news reporting. We give you the most important stories of the day. We analyze those stories for fact and bias. We point out both. I make commentary. That's not news, that's opinion. And just as valuable as yours, which leads us to debate. Let's talk about the aforementioned, shall we? News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report. Thanks very much for being a part of our broadcast. Okay. So, by the way, we have on this debate thing, we have this chat room on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, and people are using it. And I'm you see, you make me in red. What? No, okay. Randy is concerned about my choice of debating, of subjects to debate. And what we debate is essentially what we're talking about at the time. I mean, I'm basically starting a conversation about things that, and I report the news, and then we have a conversation about that news. And Randy, if you want to debate that news, that's fine. But if you want to debate something that's completely off the beaten track, that's not what we do. That's not the broadcast for you. By the way, you came up on Facebook, okay, and it marked you in red. I didn't have anything to do with that, by the way. You said, "See, you marked me in red." No, I didn't do that. That's automatic. That has nothing to do with me. Okay, so I don't even know who makes those choices. So there you go. Let's see. They said, JD, we didn't have a crisis at the border. Now are okay. Take two. Gail says, they said, JD, we did not have a crisis at the border. Now our Republican governors showing the truth and Democrats are having a meltdown. Completely correct. It's called accountability. Let's see. Sanctuary cities protect criminals. Just another loophole for the elites. Okay. Well, let's see who else is talking to us at this particular moment. And then Randy is talking about debate items, and he says I avoid them. Well, we're going to talk about Ukraine. If you want to debate Ukraine, we can talk about that, Randy. Let's see. Alicia just said, I bought my flag made in America. I wonder if the fabric and bracelets or brackets were made there as well. Yes, the answer is yes. If it's made in America, it's made in America, and it says so. If it's assembled in America, it also says that, et cetera, et cetera. So there you go. Let's get to work. This from Reuters. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky appealed to leaders of the Group of Seven Nations today for more air defense capabilities, and the G7 vowed to support Kiev for as long as it takes, while warning Russia against any use of nuclear weapons. NATO said it was closely monitoring nuclear forces in Russia, allowing a string of Russian battlefield defeats in Ukraine, and that the allies were also boosting security around key infrastructure after recent attacks on Baltic Sea gas pipelines. Russian missiles again hit Ukrainian cities, but with less intensity than yesterday, where dozens of strikes killed 19 people, wounded more than 100, and knocked out power supplies across the country in Moscow's biggest aerial offensive since the start of the invasion, February 24th. More missile strikes killed at least one person in southeastern Ukraine, in the town of Zaporizhia, and left part of the western city of Lviv without power, this according to local officials. Air raid sirens earlier wailed across Ukraine for a second day. When Ukraine receives a sufficient quantity of modern and effective air defense systems, the key elements of Russia's terror, rocket strikes will cease to work, said Zelensky. That during a virtual meeting where he again ruled out peace talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Ukraine received the first 4 Iris-T air defense systems made by Germany, according to a German defense ministry source. The White House later said the U.S. was speeding up the shipment of sophisticated NASAMS air defenses to Ukraine. Washington had provided more than $16.8 billion worth of security aid to Ukraine during the war. Zelensky's government has mixed gratitude for such aid, with pleas for more powerful weapons and faster deliveries. The G7, which groups the United States, Germany, France, Japan, Britain, Italy, and Canada, pledged continued financial, humanitarian, military, diplomatic, and legal support for as long as it takes to Ukraine in a statement. It also condemned indiscriminate attacks on innocent civilian populations as war crimes and said that Putin would be held account for them. Moscow, which calls its actions in Ukraine a special military operation to eliminate dangerous nationalists and protect Russian speakers, has accused the West of escalating and prolonging the conflict by supporting Kiev. We warn and hope they realize the danger of uncontrolled escalation in Washington and other Western capitals. This is Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov, quoted by the RIA news agency today. That's the RIA news agency today. Kiev and Western backers accuse Russia of an unprovoked imperialist land grab in Ukraine. Belarus, Moscow's closest ally, said it had begun exercises to assess its combat readiness after ordering troops to deploy with Russian forces near its border with Ukraine. Belarus allowed Russia to use its territory to invade Ukraine, but has not yet sent its own troops across the border. Zelensky denied Minsk's claim, that's hard to say, that Ukraine planned to attack Belarus, but told the G7 he wanted to make sure there was no threat from its northern neighbor, and he called for a mission of international observers to monitor the border area. Putin, under domestic pressure to ramp up the war as his forces have lost ground since early September, said he ordered Monday's strikes as revenge for an explosion that damaged a Russian bridge that annexed Crimea last weekend. Residents in the capital of Kiev took cover today for the second day in a deep underground metro where trains were still running. Victoria Moshkivsky, there we go. She's 35 years of age. She and her family were among the hundreds of people at the Zoloty Vorota station near a park where a missile ripped a crater next to a playground on Monday. Putin thinks that if he scares the population, he can ask for concessions, but he is not scaring us. He's making us angry. That's not the word. Those are not the words she used. She said of her sons Timur and Renat as they sat by her side in a sleeping bag, the younger playing with a King Kong action figure. In recent weeks, Moscow has annexed new tracts of Ukraine, mobilized hundreds of thousands of Russians to fight, and repeatedly threatened to use nuclear arms, stoking alarm in the West. A European diplomat said NATO was considering convening a virtual summit of the alliance to consider its response. NATO has not noticed any change in Russia's nuclear posture following the threats. Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg told reporters in Brussels on Tuesday. See, that's smart. That's smart of Vladimir Putin. If they start rattling the nuclear saber and it's one thing to rattle the nuclear saber. Rattling a saber makes noise. Drawing a saber does not. If indeed Vladimir Putin is not serious about using nuclear weapons, he's not going to do anything to improve their readiness. And I assure you, there are things he needs to do to improve readiness in that particular part of the Russian military forces. The strategic rocket forces, just like any other very complex military organization, are populated with people with perishable skills that have to be renewed, retrained. And that's something that we would notice. And that's something that Vladimir Putin is not doing. Now, when he starts doing that, that's when things get exciting. When he actually starts working on his nuclear inventory, when he starts moving launchers around, the mobile ones, that's a little bit different. Things get serious then. But remember, at this particular moment, we're about DEFCON 4. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, we got to DEFCON 3 with most of the U.S. land forces. The Strategic Air Command went to DEFCON 2 and stayed there for 30 days. That was during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Once again, those are things you can't hide. If things start to get very serious, believe me, you'll hear about them here on the Wells Report, I promise. So NATO is watching very carefully. That is good. Now we'll see what else happens. As for President Biden's part, he said in an interview on CNN exclusively that this was happening today. You'll see it on CNN if you want to go there. He believed Russian President Vladimir Putin is a rational actor who nonetheless badly misjudged his ability to invade Ukraine and suppress its people. I'm sure. I'm sure he's reasonably sure that what was going to end up happening was sort of what happened in Czechoslovakia in 1968. The Red Army rolled in with all their tanks and all their might and so on and so forth, and the Czechoslovakian people basically laid down, except for a handful of them who confronted the tanks with rocks. There's a famous picture of a guy in Prague throwing a rock, and I believe it was a T-55. It stuck with me my whole life. It shocked me. I was just becoming aware of the ways of empire building. And I'm not talking about what one of your middle managers does at your office. No, I'm talking about real empire building. And it was horrific. And that's what Vladimir Putin was thinking was going to happen. He didn't expect the Ukrainian people to do anything except say, okay, well, we're back home with Mother Russia. So President Biden said this, quote, I think he's a rational actor who has miscalculated significantly. He was talking to Jake Tapper. As Russian bombardments on civilian targets in Ukraine signaled another turning point in the months-long war. You'll hear that interview tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, CNN Tonight with Jake Tapper. President Biden, his top officials, and fellow Western leaders have spent the past several months debating what steps Putin may take as troops suffer embarrassing losses on the battlefield in Ukraine. They're not that embarrassing. Remember, this is an army of somewhere around 300,000. They're up against 44 million angry Ukrainians. That is not going to go well. I mean, at some point, you got to remember what Joseph Stalin said. Quantity has a quality all of its own. You just can't defeat an entire country of people that are focused on keeping their freedom. You just can't do that. I wonder if American leaders are aware of that concept. I certainly hope so. Whether Putin has been acting rationally or has been the subject of intense debate as leaders work to predict his next steps, Biden said today, that he believed Putin himself was rational. He characterized the Russian leader's aims in Ukraine, which Putin laid out in an angry speech as he launched the war in February, as ridiculous. Quote, you listen to what he says. If you listen to the speech he made after when that decision was being made, he talked about the whole idea of he just needed to be the leader of Russia, united all of the Russian-speaking countries. I mean, I think it's just irrational. What else did President Biden say on this particular issue? We'll tell you coming up in just a couple of moments. Also, Nissan did something amazing. I'm very impressed with Nissan. There are cars that they have that I like very, very much, but I'm a Chevy guy. But I do want to pat Nissan on the back having to do with this particular topic. I'll explain why coming up in just a couple of moments. You are listening to the Wells Report. Thanks very much for doing so. This is Tuesday. It is the 11th day of October, year of our Lord, 2022. If you have anything you'd like to say, please call me. 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. As I told you, I'm a Chevy guy. I have been a Chevy guy for a very, very long time. I can see no reason to change my mind for any reason, actually. What I want to do is I want to tell you about this while we're talking about Ukraine. Okay? This, by the way, being reported by Fox Business. So, the Nissan car manufacturing company, okay? Nissan, yeah. They have sold all their assets in Russia and are leaving the country. Yeah, they sold all of their assets to Russia. You know what the price was? €1. €1. All the assembly plants. Everything. Nissan is only the latest major company to flee Russia following Russian President Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. How much did this cost Nissan? Somewhere around $687 million. But the company believes it will not affect earnings forecasts for the fiscal year. Nissan's move comes months after the company cut business ties with Russia in March, suspending production at its plant in St. Petersburg. The company has roughly 2,000 employees in the country. On behalf of Nissan, I thank our Russian colleagues for their contribution to the business over many years, said Nissan President and CEO Makoto Uchida in a Tuesday statement. While we cannot continue operating in the market, we have found the best possible solution to support our people. Doesn't surprise me. The deal allows Nissan to purchase back the assets within 6 years. Marriott, McDonald's, and a slew of others also opted to pull out of the country and leave their assets behind. Marriott closed all of its corporate offices in Moscow in June. McDonald's sold all of its franchises in the country to Russian oligarch Alexander Govar. We have come to the view that the newly announced US, UK, and EU restrictions will make it impossible for Marriott to continue to operate or franchise hotels in the Russian market, said Marriott. We have therefore made the decision to suspend all Marriott's international operations in Russia. Nissan's departure comes days after Russian forces conducted brutal missile attacks on Kiev and in more than a dozen other Ukrainian cities this week. The missile strikes came after months of relative calm in most Ukrainian cities. The country's forces achieved significant victories throughout September, pushing Russian forces well into the territories that Vladimir Putin claimed to annex. $1 cost Nissan $687 million to suspend operations in Russia. I'll tell you what, we may be on the brink of an idea that used to be somewhat prevalent in kind of spurts on and off in the United States and around the world. And that's where corporations, gigantic corporations, do amazingly good things. Holding Russia accountable for what they're doing in Ukraine is an amazingly good thing. I'm glad they made that move. And like I said, I'm a Chevy guy, but if I wasn't, you can bet your bottom dollar that I'd be headed to a Nissan dealership today just to see what they had hanging around. Because that's the kind of thing. That's the kind of thing that gets my attention. When people do the right thing. It also gets my attention when people do the wrong thing. There's some of that coming up here in just a couple of moments on the Wells Report as we get you through the news, the analysis, the commentary, and debate. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. You can contact us on the chat room. By all means, do so. We are waiting for you. And please support the Wells Report. Coming up in just a couple of moments, we'll tell you how. Stay where you are. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. Our chat room is available for you on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. This broadcast will be put up for podcast view on both Rumble and Patreon immediately following this broadcast. So by all means, if you want to watch or go back through some of this stuff again, please by all means do so. Okay? See if I can get this back where it belongs here. By the way, I wanted to tell you, I am doing this as an independent voice. Normally, my radio career had to do with some of the greatest radio corporations in the history of broadcasting. But I'm not working for any of them anymore. I'm working for myself. This is a production of John David Productions, and it's independent, which means I don't have a corporation paying me anything. So if you would like to, there's a way you can do it. You can go to patreon.com/The Wells Report, and you can throw $1 a month at me. Really, that's all it takes. You don't have to do any more than that. That's just fine. Yes, you can throw $2. You can throw $5. I get queasy when I think about it, but people have been very, very nice and very generous and made it possible for me to do this show. And if you would like to be one of them, you certainly are perfectly invited to put your money where my mouth is. Go to patreon.com/The Wells Report. If you don't think by any stretch of the imagination that this show is worth any money, at least subscribe to it and share it with your friends. I would appreciate it dramatically. One of the most amazing things that we have seen in the last few election cycles is that there are no insignificant elections, all the way down to school board of the United States. We've heard an awful lot about Loudoun County, Virginia, and so on. Well, there are other places that are having these issues, and one of them is in Dearborn, Michigan. A crowd of parents were scolded during a Dearborn, Michigan school board meeting after they took issue with how the district decides if a book is appropriate for their children's eyes. And Roxanne McDonald, who is, by the way, the board president, got after some boisterous parents after, well, they expressed their displeasure with the way things were going in this particular meeting. Let me show you what I'm talking about.
And educators have been attacked by some of members of the public and labeled as sexual predators and groomers. This is insulting and disrespectful and libel. This is a serious accusation and undermines our educators and librarians. I agree with my colleague, Trustee Berry, and all of you that parents have a choice and they have a voice, and this administration have given you that voice. Thank you.
That is not necessary. We understand that people have differing opinions. We will conduct ourselves as adults. We will not boo. We will not jeer. You can clap if you'd like, and you'll listen to the speaker.
I just want to remind everyone, there are young children here watching your behavior. Please be courteous and respectful of each other's opinions.
You do not have the floor. You do not have the floor. Trustee Watt, the purpose of these meetings is to conduct the business of the board. Because we appreciate and value the input from our community, we set aside time at each meeting to hear your thoughts and your concerns. This time is not meant to be a dialogue, but an opportunity to hear from our constituents. That is why we generally do not respond to each comment made at the time, even though many of the comments are opinions and not always based in fact. We know that thoughts are shared during public comment section of our meetings may be critical to our actions or those of those that work in our district. As elected officials, we accept that our actions will be judged either positively or negatively by our community members. However, comments made that are critical should not be hostile, slanderous, or out of line with the district's core values. All of our employees go through a rigorous background check, so making baseless and inappropriate accusations could have legal ramifications. Words and tones do matter, so let's all be civil and respectful. The ability to share civil discourse without being mean-spirited or slanderous seems to be a lost talent. Our children are watching. I would ask that all of us work together to be a model behavior we can be proud of. Behavior that allows for differing opinions, voices, ideas, and thoughts to be shared without malice, harm, or vengefulness. I am asking that all of us here tonight be respectful of every speaker. That means to listen and not to talk when you do not have the floor. I will respect everyone here by doing my part as board president to treat everyone with the same level of fairness.
This is Roxanne
Therefore,
McDonald. She's the board
No one will be
president.
allowed to exceed the 3-minute time rule. Each person has 3 minutes to convey their thoughts, and there will be no sharing of minutes. Although we have allowed this in the past, it is truly unfair, and we will no longer allow anyone to speak more than their allotted 3 minutes. Therefore, no, I am, as board president, I have the right to set the time limits.
You have the right to sit there and tell us we can't talk.
Roxanne, just continue, Roxanne,
Okay.
just continue.
That was loud.
I have the floor. Everyone will be treated fairly. Everyone will be treated fairly.
Apparently, there's something going on in a part of the room we can't see.
Hey, everyone, quiet down for one quick second, please. Right? That's what we've been informed right now by the fire marshal. So hold on.
So apparently, somebody said there were too many people in the room and that the fire marshal wanted people to leave. How convenient. And then this happened.
We're going to be recessing until we can get the situation under control. This is breaking the fire code. We need to get the fire marshal's opinion, and we need to get some people cleared out of the room. This is a dangerous situation. We are taking a recess.
And that was that. Okay, so there are no more, shall we say, insignificant elections, even down to school board. And how do we know that? Well, because conservative political action committees are getting very, very busy with their donations to candidates. Let me explain what I'm talking about here. This from Fox News. Conservative political PACs are spending millions of dollars to help elect Republican candidates to school boards across the country this election cycle. About time. While school board elections have traditionally been of low interest, both to voters and donors, focus on the boards has exploded in recent years thanks to the parental rights movement. The primary PAC pushing the reforms nationwide is the 1776 Project. It's the 1776 Project PAC, which is spending millions to campaign for dozens of candidates. Places we're not supposed to typically win, we've won in, said the group's founder, Ryan Gerdusky, telling the Associated Press, I think we can do it again. Other conservative organizations have traditionally focused on bigger government roles, are shifting their sight as well. The American Principals Project has seen its donations surge since it bolstered campaigns of 4 school board members in Polk County, Florida. We lean heavily into retaking federal power, APP President Terry Schilling told the Associated Press. But if you also don't take over the local school board, you're not going to have local allies there to actually reverse the policies these guys have been implementing. It's like all of a sudden they finally figured out that these people are going after our kids. They're going after our kids to build a new socialist paradise. And so far, they're well down the road. And they'll do apparently anything to do it, up to and including being extremely fair to everyone except parents. School board curriculums and policies have become a hot topic for conservative politicians after Republican Glenn Youngkin capitalized on the issue to take the governor's office in Virginia. Parents in Virginia were outraged at their school's handling of sexual misconduct cases involving transgender students and also decried the teachings of critical race theory, among other things. Republican Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed a parental rights and education bill earlier this year, banning the discussion of gender or sexual identity in classrooms in third grade or under. What business is it of schools in third grade or fourth grade and higher? It's not something the schools need to be dealing with. That's just my opinion. Okay. DeSantis also took the unprecedented step of endorsing a suite of school board candidates across the state, even while withholding his endorsement from many Republicans running to represent Florida in Congress. Yeah. Well, maybe it's because Ron DeSantis doesn't think they're actual Republicans. Maybe that has something to do with it, because certainly that's the case. What do people say here on the Wells Report? Glad you asked. Let's see. What was said was that caused all the booing is when she said everybody will be treated fairly. Well, apparently the people there didn't believe so. And then went on to say a bunch of power-hungry persons. But she didn't use the word persons. Democrat PACs, Democrat political action committees spend tons of monies at all levels. True. But what has happened is the leftist takeover of education happened 30 years ago or 40 years ago. They're working on the second generation of happy young socialists in our schools. So this is somebody that homeschools, by the way. I had kids in the system. If I had kids in the system, I'd be running for school board or I'd be in jail. As we've seen, when parents step up at school board meetings, you can expect a visit from the FBI. Yeah, the DOJ is absolutely perfectly willing to hammer people that stand up at school boards. Terry McAuliffe, who Glenn Youngkin defeated in Virginia, actually stood up in front of Virginia during a debate and said, I don't believe that parents have any right to tell schools what they should be teaching their children. That's the quiet part. That's the quiet part spoken out loud. Yeah, and that's what lost the election for him. There's nothing fair about what that person was talking about at that school board meeting. People disagree with her, so let's recess. We see what you're doing, you witch. Really? I know. Well, okay, obviously it's Halloween. It's coming up on Halloween. Okay, so that's why. Okay, I get it. And I do mean witch because the attack on children is demonic. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, okay. What else do we have? My eldest daughter homeschools her daughter, does not trust these schools anymore. My daughter is an attorney. Yeah, welcome to the homeschool side, says Jess. We have freedom. Yes, you do. And you also have happier, better educated kids. And by the way, when I say that, that's not a guess. That's not some patronizing comment of somebody that listens to the Wells Report. I happen to know this person's children. I've met them several times. They are sweet. They are polite. They are well-spoken. They are brilliant kids. And they're doing incredibly well. And I am so proud to know them. I'm not going to tell you their names because it's not the right thing to do. But they know who they are. And they listen to this broadcast along with their mother and their father, I believe. But that being said, I want to make this abundantly clear. The very best way to stop this garbage in the schools is to stop your kids from going. You know, we've been listening to politicians for years say, well, you know, we're going to change things so that school tax money or money that's taxed by from homeowners and so on and so forth will follow the kid instead of just relegating some kid to some school somewhere based on their area code. But it hasn't happened yet, has it? No, the best way to do this, take your kids out of school. You know, if you took about 25% of the kids out of public schools would be better instantly. It's all about the Benjamins, I guess. You're listening to the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We were just talking about homeschooling and information that I have on homeschooling. And I've been following homeschooling for a long time because, you know, if you expect a politician to solve your problem, well, you're going to be expecting for a very, very long time. One of the main tenets that I ascribe to on this broadcast, and I say it often, is that politics loves a problem but hates a solution. They'd rather have an issue than solve a problem. There is a problem in America's public schools. And I've also said that nothing in the universe is without balance. As bad as COVID-19 was, it was perfect for our kids because parents finally got a real dose of just exactly what's happening to our kids in public schools. So those two things put together should lead to exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to homeschooling. And that has to do with this. Take your kids out of public schools. Every kid that doesn't show up to public schools costs the public schools money. Because that's why there are truancy laws, by the way, in case you're wondering, so that the school system gets federal money based on the number of kids in the school. They also get money when they can diagnose kids with ADHD. And they can also get money from the federal government when they find kids that are gender dysphoric and just need some support. And that means more money coming to the school district. And that's what it's all about. If you're wondering why this is happening, why it was that your school teacher was diagnosing ADHD in your young son, which happened to me, and if you're wondering why all of a sudden you've got all these kids that have gender dysphoria, that's why. Because they get federal money. Anyway, that being said, that's another conversation. Stop attending, and you'll find that your kids will be far better off. Margie has a daughter who is teaching her kids at home. She is a lawyer. Her daughter is 11 years old and tested at the 10th grade level. What does that tell you? That tells you that there's something badly wrong with public schools. And it tells you that there should be something done about it. And it should be something that, since politicians refuse to do something, we'll just take care of it ourselves. By the way, it's not the only thing that's going on of that nature. There is kind of a parallel universe going on in the United States that has to do with all kinds of things. Conservative Americans being shut out of major social circumstances in this country because they are conservative. I've lost a lot of friends because I voted for Donald Trump. By the way, they'll never be my friends again. I told them, I said, hey, if you're going to base our friendship on who I vote for, then you need to understand you're closing that door, but I'm going to lock it. It's never going to open again. Ever. And it never will. Because that's just not something. Leave me in peace means leave me in peace. So progressive zealotry has led to many Americans saying, see ya. You know, the Daily Wire, that's Ben Shapiro, one of my colleagues' project, the Daily Wire, found itself in a situation where it went to Podcast Movement, which is an industry conclave for podcasters. The conclave rented a booth to Daily Wire. But then a whole bunch of podcasters started getting all upset about the fact that Ben Shapiro was actually taking part in Podcast Movement. Organizers said in a Twitter post, we take full responsibility for the harm done by Ben Shapiro's presence. In 9 wonderful years growing and celebrating this medium, Podcast Movement has made mistakes. The pain caused by this one will always stick with us. The reaction from the Daily Wire team and their many fans and sympathizers was fury. Amazingly, Podcast Movement later apologized for Shapiro for their initial apology. Shapiro called out liberal commentators and podcasters who stayed silent in the face of his post hoc cancellation. He did so in terms that set the stage for the conservative movement's larger descent from the institutional mainstream, a phenomenon within which the Daily Wire is leading the way. Your silence is deafening. If you want parallel economies, if you want parallel podcasting universes, well, if you want all those things, you can certainly have them. And we will lead the way. And that's exactly what he's doing. You know about Harry's Razors? Harry's Razors? It was a way for you to get really good shaves for not that much money. I mean, you know, you go down to Walmart and you buy Gillette Fusion blades. They'll cost you $30. Anyway, Harry's Razors started playing politics. They started hammering people for disagreeing with the leftist brilliance. And so what ended up happening? Well, Jeremy's Razors started up. Harry's Razors used to buy advertising on the Daily Wire. Well, they pulled their advertising because they just didn't think that conservatism was the right way. Well, Jeremy's Razors picked up. It was launched by Co-founder Jeremy Boring after a company called Harry's Razors pulled their advertising and ripped the listeners for political reasons. Jeremy's Razors is wildly successful, cutting into the consumer base of the Daily Wire's former sponsor. See, when you find something, like I was talking about Nissan earlier today, they did something right. They pulled their entire manufacturing out of Russia, sold their assets for €1. Those are the people you want to pay attention to. Those are the people you want to support. Those are the people that will lead us out of this. And we need to make sure that we support them. I dare say I'm one of them. This has been the Wells Report. See you tomorrow. God bless all y'all. Thanks very much for being with us today. It means a lot to me. And it does. So let's see, as we often do here at the last part of this. Oh, I just found the podcast. You just funded the podcast. Pep, are you still there? Hey, man, what I'm going to try to do, thank you so much, my friend. Hey, listen, let's see, the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Candace Owens, PragerU, part of our schooling because it helps us have thoughtful conversations. They are great questions. I remember my parents used to be able to watch the news on television. We'd discuss it during dinner. It was wonderful. Let's see. Good night, Miss Yvonne. Thank you, Yvonne. I appreciate that. My daughter here in Texas teaches 7th grade English, and none of this outrageous, disgusting things are happening in her school or the schools here. They still say the Pledge of Allegiance in grade school. Great. Fantastic. Hey, Pep, where are you? You found the podcasts. Oh, you didn't fund. Okay, I get it. Thanks. I was just going to say thanks if you had funded them. God bless you. Let's see. What else do we have here? I get that homeschooling isn't for everyone. The system has proven to me that they don't want we, the people, to think for ourselves. Completely correct. Completely correct. Not all homeschoolers are super religious, weird, etc. It's amazing how the family dynamic changes when you actually spend most of your time with your kids instead of sending them off to school. Yeah. The Wells Report. He must have found them. Okay. Turn on the sound. JD. The sound is good, right? It's still working. Not trying to be harsh, but your phone hardly rings. To me, well, I don't know why the phone hardly rings. I have no idea. That happened when I was working for when I was working for Case Guy, and I was really concerned about it until somebody said, well, maybe it's because they believe you're saying what you need to say and what they want to say. Okay, that could be. But there are a lot of people listening, and there are a lot of people watching these things in the thousands. I mean, it's amazing. I don't know why they don't call. I don't know why they don't call, Randy. And you're not being harsh, you're just being real. I understand that too. And I don't know why people don't call, but I certainly hope one of these days they do. Because I really enjoy interacting with people on the phone. I really do. I'm not one of those guys that stomps on people. I don't stomp on people unless they're disrespectful. If they're disrespectful, I'll just, fine, leave me in peace, whatever. But yeah, I'd like more people to call. I really would. And I think it's because this show is so small. Most of the people listening to this broadcast are familiar with it. And they don't speak a lot. Isaac will call. Let's see. No, I'm over here to your right. Oh, okay. Hang on a second. Now, can you see me, Arthur? See how I did that? Isn't that really fascinating? Isn't that fantastic? Isn't that incredible? Isn't that cool? Anyway, let's see what else. See, I was over to my right. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, look, you're perfectly welcome to talk about anything you want to, but when we debate, it's essential that we talk about what we're actually discussing on the show, what the actual news stories are. That's the only real hindrance. We don't do open lines very often. We don't say, I'd like to talk about cattle mutilations in Wyoming. Well, okay, that is something that you need to keep in mind, okay? You're looking for the live broadcast on Rumble. Okay, Pep, let me talk to you about the live broadcast on Rumble. Rumble works with the studio stuff that I use, Restream, okay? Except they don't have a a tile for me to click on so that I can do all the work necessary to get everything hooked up. We are working on trying to put the live broadcast on Rumble. We're looking forward to doing it. So hang in there, and we'll be there. As a matter of fact, I need to go now, because what I need to do is I need to go and put the shows up on both Patreon and Rumble. Okay, so Pep, it'll be there. The show will be up in about, I would say, about a half an hour. It takes a long time for them to put those things up, but it'll be there. And do me a favor, when you get there, when you see it, do me a favor and write me a note under the comment section. Write me a note, Pep, because I really appreciate the fact, I think you're the first guy to get through to us on Rumble, although you're on YouTube. So be the first one to find us on Rumble, okay? And make sure you write me a note so that I can get back to you, okay? And thanks very much for all that you do. All right, God bless you all. I got to get rolling because I got to get all these podcasts put together. Arthur, it's always great to hear from you, buddy. How's your Mustang running? Mine too. It's gone.